Hi everyone, here we go with our final topic in exercise for special populations. And the topic is on youth and physical activity. Once again, I'm going to skip through some of the slides and you can pause if you want to spend more time on them. But just an introduction to this chapter, so to speak. It's not really a chapter in your book, it's just a slide and presentation. We know that inactivity among adults, but also children and adolescents, is a major public health concern. It's very important that children start off with good just access to physical activities. It's not exercise for children, it's really physical activity and movement. And the fourth bullet here, I want to just impress upon you that adult exercise guidelines that we've been using in our book and in our class so far, they're not really appropriate for younger populations. We want kids to just go out and move their body in different ways by games, by playing in different ways, by going up over things, under things, moving their body in so many different ways. So unfortunately, a large number of kids do not get the recommended amount of physical activity. In this section, when we talk about children, we're referring to boys and girls who have not yet gone through puberty. So up to about the age of 11 in girls and 13 in boys. Adolescents are really teenagers, and it's that time between childhood and adulthood. It's girls roughly ages 12 to 18 and boys roughly ages 14 to 18. So kind of like you, when I use the term youth, I'm really talking about both children and adolescents. You can see this fourth bullet, that's what I'm trying to say. Children don't need instead of active and structured outdoor play. Unfortunately, children are spending more time with electronic media and television. So we want to make sure we change that. And so when parents do have those rules about, no phone, no computer for so many hours a day, or they can only use those things during certain times, that's really a good thing. We want children to go out and play. I had a student one time who said, oh, my kid just wants to stay in and watch videos. It was a little girl. Well, if that's all you give that little girl is just to sit there and watch videos, that really isn't a way to build energy and interest in the outdoors. So parents do need to watch this and let children be exposed to whatever they have access to, whether it's in the neighborhood, there's parks throughout neighborhoods, or whether they're a parent who has access to even more activities and more like implements. We are lucky because we have parks all around, we have beaches, we have all kinds of things for parents to take their kids to, generally. And the last bullet, just like with adults, kids are not meeting that minimum of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And this doesn't include juice. We're really talking about real fruit, real vegetables. Juices are just not recommended. We want people to develop an appetite and a desire for fruits and vegetables. And so there's many different ways to help kids get that. But this lack of regular physical activity and the greater accessibility to highly caloric foods and less nutrient dense foods is contributing to obesity in youth. So, and these trends are related to obesity related comorbidities. I mean, just think about type 2 diabetes, right? We know from studying that before that as body weight increases, the risk of type 2 diabetes also increases. And it's the same thing for children. I remember explaining to you that they used to call type 2 adult onset because kids didn't get it. Well, now kids are even getting type 2 diabetes because they're overweight, they're inactive. The other problem with obesity is during times of youth is that it's associated with psychological problems like depression, low self-esteem, and that's just another reason why we really want to help children. We always want to build self-esteem. Low self-esteem is the cause of many different issues. So look at all these potential health and fitness benefits of exercise. We have a nice list here, and many of them I think you know, but it is really good to review them. Also, this fifth bullet here, enhance sport performance. When kids have a better self-esteem, they have better self-efficacy for for ball handling skills like hand-eye coordination, um, and foot coordination too, like for soccer, then they're more apt to go and join in on games or join in on sports related, related to that. So we really want to help kids build these skills, but you want to build skills in a non-performance and non-competition system where they can just practice without worrying about letting down their teammates or scoring or not scoring. Also, physical activities for children and adolescents and improves the attitude toward lifelong physical activity. We want people to be active and active through their lifetime. It doesn't mean the things we do as children or as teenagers are going to be the things that we do in our 50s, but it really improves that attitude towards the desire, towards the enjoyment of, towards looking forward to physical activities, wherever they are in their lifespan. Now, youth have different needs than adults, and they're active in many different ways. So just think about that. Think about when you were a kid, how you went and played. I have a feeling that some of you were very active as children because even as most of you are in your 20s or 30s, you enjoy exercise or something about exercise that has drawn you to this field. There's also a lot of differences in physical development between youth at the same age, right? Maybe you can think back, or maybe you're a parent or you're working with kids and you see all these kids who are 10, but you see different skills there, or especially like age 12, where some are starting to develop or going through puberty and some aren't. So you see a lot of differences in sizes, but also in some of the, some children are just more highly skilled. And that might be because their parents have introduced many different physical activities to them. So they're just kind of all around, kind of better at some of the activities on the playground or in school PE classes. Some physiological differences. So youth have a higher breathing frequency. Okay, so their breath rate is higher, and a lower tidal volume. So this means there's more breaths taken per minute, but they don't breathe in but the volume that they breathe in is less per breath. In their heart, they exhibit lower stroke volume, so that means less blood going out per heartbeat, and the heart rate is higher for all exercise intensities. And if you think about the estimated target training equation of 220 minus your age is your estimated max heart rate, that fits in with this. The estimation of maximum heart rate by age, that 220 minus your age, it's inappropriate for youth, so you don't use it for kids. It's for adults, and it is just an estimate. Note that heart rate recovery is generally faster in children and teens than in adults. So after exercise, their heart rate recovers faster than an adult would. Children tend to be metabolic non-specialists. This means that the strongest kid is often the fastest kid. Right, and if you think back to your own grammar school or high school years, did you kind of see this? Let's say elementary school. Can you remember some of the kids that were just really good? They were fast, they had good ball handling skills, and part of that could be their exposure to PE, to parents that can, or family members that can take them out and play with them, so they just get more experiences. It builds their self-esteem and self-efficacy for exercise. So the importance of play, right? We can't really overstate that. Children want to have fun. They want to build relationships, but also they do like to improve their physical skills. They like little challenges, not overwhelming challenges, but little challenges that they can meet, new things they can try to do. But they don't really value the long duration and or high intensity exercise. Now there can be exceptions to this, and I've seen this with a friend of mine who hikes because he's taken his nephew out for years since the nephew was real little. So even as an older youth or a teenager, the kid could go hiking with us and really stay with us. And I've seen it in parents who are runners, that close friends that I have, young boy was also a distance runner because I think he was exposed to that. It probably has something to do with the genetics and cardiovascular system possibly too. So you do see that, but often young kids do not need to do long duration or high intensity exercise. Kids are going to run, run as they play or play a game. They're going to rest and recover. And that's kind of how that goes. But they don't need really drills so much. So there's different fitness assessments, but we really want to stay away from that pass-fail mentality, as this approach can discourage people. It can really discourage people who we want to encourage to continue to exercise, right? People who keep failing, they don't want to continue to try this because it just makes them feel like a failure, and it really doesn't help their enjoyment of physical activity. So instead of calling it a test, call it a challenge. I actually took this, and in my health education class, I don't even call it tests anymore. I call them challenges, just to put a little more positive spin on it. Here's one of the fitness grams that's available. And I want to go back to one thing on this slide. So fitness assessments, instead of making a pass fail, it can demonstrate what they can do now compared to what they could do before. And that's a way to look at it where the kids will be interested in that. Even in my adapted aquatic class, I have them do these 10-minute runs in the water, and I test them before and I test them after so they can see changes. And they're really interested in knowing what they can do. And then for some, what I'll do is I'll have them at the end rate their perceived exertion at the end of their 10 minutes. So in case the amount of ground that they cover doesn't change in 10 over the semester, maybe they're not rating their perceived exertion as high. And that's another way to look at fitness. So youth should experience success. Whatever they're doing, you want them to feel good about it. Now, not everybody's going to be a winner, but you want to pull out some of the good nuggets of what they're doing, because you want them to gain confidence in this, build their self-efficacy for what they're doing, so they will continue to be active. Children and adolescents need to participate in at least an hour or more of moderate to physical activity, okay? And that's not saying, okay, you're going to go out and run now for an hour, but it's different types of exercise. It's different types of physical activity or games or sports, like this kid. This kid, look at his stance there. Doesn't he look like somebody who is pretty good on the basketball court, huh? And so he probably loves it and then wants to do it more. Youth could also increase the amount of time for physical activity just by reducing the sedentary leisure pursuits, things like video gaming, playing on the computer, watching videos. But note that if youth have been inactive for a while and they're very detrained, just gradually increase their amount of physical activity. And here's one prescription for that. Gradually increase it. Another thing is you can help with them or their parents helping them accumulate physical activity throughout the day. Instead of just one bout, maybe they can play in the morning or at lunchtime or in the evenings or after homework. And this would be really good right now when we're all stuck at home. If you have kids at home, this is another way to handle that. And I bet some parents naturally gravitate towards this, needing a break or knowing that their kids need a break from being inside or doing their homework. Continuous moderate to vigorous activity, though, lasting more than 5 to 10 minutes in children is rare, right? They're going to be active, they're going to rest, they're going to be active, they're going to rest. And that's a good way to design games for them and sport practice for them. So a lot of youth will just think that long endurance exercise is monotonous, it's boring, it's discomforting, and they don't want to do it. So that's why those rest periods or adding some fun into it, or some kind of skill development into that can just make it a better, more fun experience. Once again, giving them brief rest periods so they can recover and they can recharge. This just makes it overall better for them, a better experience. So stop and go games or circuit training that alternates higher effort and lower effort segments. Just like with adults, that'd be a good way to do some circuit training to help adults build their cardiorespiratory system and their muscle fitness at the same time. And you can just observe this for kids. You don't have to take their heart rate generally. You can just observe how they're doing, how they're breathing. Are they bending over with their hands on their knees? Are they exhausted? Are they flopping on the grass? So you want to lead some group activities for them too, because that can be fun. That can help them build friendships too, and learn how to support each other and work on sportsmanship. You could design something that's 20 to 30 minutes of intermittent stop and go kind of exercises, and build that up, especially for somebody who's low level. Work on building that up over time. You can build up the vigorous demands of the activity too. Build it up over time with progressions. And once again, just by simple observation, you can see how hard this intensity is for the kids. If you're leaving all the kids on the wayside, and only one, makes it to the end, then that was probably too hard. But perform aerobic activities, develop them that are challenging, interesting, and fun. And if you do work with kids, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of activities you could even find on the internet to give you ideas for this. You don't just want to throw out the ball and let them do sports, because that's a little bit different. Sports don't always encourage everyone to participate, and to build a good physical activity segment for youth, you want everybody to participate. Nobody's on the sides, nobody's benched in a good group activity session for children. There is that belief out there that strength training could damage children's growth plates and slow their musculoskeletal development, but it's really unfounded when the strength training or muscle fitness training is done safely, with good forms and with safe progressions. So research does demonstrate that strength training can be safe and effective for children and adolescents, but it needs to be age appropriate, and there needs to be good guidance. If you guys remember when you were in high school, did they, in their weight room, did it say, oh, like so and so had the bench pressing, has done more weight on the bench press or more weight on the squat than anybody else? Those things and the peer pressure put on that can actually be harmful. So I'm hoping that high schools are not having those boards up there celebrating that, because it causes many people to push more than they should. So just to let you know, there's some evidence suggests that carefully planned preseason strength and conditioning programs can reduce sports-related injuries. So there are benefits to this. And here's another one too. You might have somebody who is heavy and he's not a good runner, not good with the endurance stuff, maybe not even good with the sports, but get them into the weight training and wow, that's something that they can do. Maybe not relative to their weight, but they're going to be a little bit stronger with their absolute just like lifting of weights. Maybe you know somebody like that. Maybe when you were in high school, somebody came back after getting on a good program over the summer and you saw their body composition change. And then that can increase self-esteem for this kid and give them something that they really feel good about. But fitness programs that include strength training or really muscle fitness training can improve health and body composition for overweight and obese youth. So strength training with moderate loads, not super heavy loads, but moderate loads and a higher number of repetitions can be part of a solution for long-term fat loss and weight management in kids that are overweight. There are some risks for it though. Think about kids that would be left alone in a weight room. Like what problems do you think might occur? So it needs to be supervised, properly instructed, and appropriately designed. So youth should not strength train on their own without guidance. And if they can't follow the rules, then maybe they're not in that room. Training-induced gains in strength during childhood are primarily due to neuromuscular factors. Isn't that interesting? The nerves and the muscle, the brain working here. So it's neuromuscular factors as opposed to muscle hypertrophy. Please don't suggest to children that strength training will make their muscles bigger beyond that just attained through normal growth and maturation. We don't want them to think that they're going to get big muscles, but you can let them know that they will get stronger. They'll be able to lift more within certain safe parameters. And that's really what this is saying up here. And you might know that if you've ever seen someone learn something totally new, like let's say a lunge, and they haven't done it before, they don't need any extra weights. They just need to use their body weight and work on Work on controlling their muscles and getting that down. So that's some neuromuscular control. And then later they could use more weights. And it's kind of the same for kids. They're just working on their form and lighter weights, more repetitions. And children and adolescents need to have emotional maturity so that they're not joking around and playing around in the weight room, because that could cause injury. The greatest concern for youth who strength train is the risk of an overuse injury, particularly to the lower back. I think I mentioned this to you before in the lower back chapter, where I had a young man who had a significant back injury from high school, and he was just like somewhere between 18 to 20 at that time. So we really don't want to stress to youth that they are lifting heavy weights. Here's some general strength training guidelines for youth. Just 1 set, working up to 2 sets, keeping the reps here, somewhere 10 to 15. And then you just increase really gradually as strength improves and the youth has shown that they are responsible and mature about lifting. Focus definitely on correct exercise technique and do not focus. So you're going to have to maybe change the words that you use from focusing on how much they lifted and really encouraging that, okay, to just good techniques. And then moving to multiple sets of 6 to 15 reps as time goes on. And then 2 to 3 days per week, of course, non-consecutive days. This is the same fit principle as for adults. Monitoring and keeping track of progress, and then cooling down with some good stretching. And of course, flexibility is important. There's been these long-held beliefs regarding the traditional practice of warm-up static stretching, right? So now we're more into dynamic stretches. We're like the arms up, the arms down, the arms up, the arms down. So dynamic stretching as warming up, especially before activity. And that's what this is talking about here. Lots of dynamic warm-ups and static stretching is really good at the cool down. If somebody's heart rate is really up, they can do more dynamic stretching as their heart rate comes down, and then the static stretching is a really good time right in here to do static stretching. And then be aware of people who are hyper flexible, because too much stretching can actually increase the risk of injury. So when people have hyperflexibility, and I have it in a gentleman who was in my flexibility class this semester, very, very flexible joints, and we don't want to injure those. So they just go into easy stretches without working on improving their flexibility because they don't need more flexibility in those joints. Youth who do not establish a sound fitness base and enhance their skill-related fitness are more likely to drop out. This is why you want to make it a positive experience for youth. You want to encourage them to participate in a variety of movements and design activities. Obstacle courses are really fun, right? Where they're doing different things. They're jumping up, they're climbing across, they're going under. They're using their body in different ways. And just a classic example of this is the wheelbarrow, right? Where somebody holds somebody's feet and the other person walks on their hands. That's using their body in a different way. Moving sideways, moving backwards, or getting down for like crab walks, like for kids, where they're like say you're on your back on the grass and then you put your feet down and your arms down below and you're walking like a crab with your belly facing to the sky. Those kinds of things. Those are just examples of using your body in different ways. And here's one plan to work with youth on non-consecutive days, how a workout could be planned. And notice that there's games here at the end, something where everybody's included. No one's going to be, tagged out and they have to sit down, because that doesn't help anybody's fitness level. Sitting on the bench doesn't help anyone. So dynamic warm-ups here. Here's some of the benefits of it. And beginning each session with 10 to 15 minutes dynamic warm-up. And that can be fun too. You can bring out some music. You can do some fun things with this. But more examples of how to develop a good workout kind of fitness routine, or maybe a pre-sport training routine for youth. Keep the fun in there. Keep them learning new skills. whenever we learn new skills, and think about when last time is it you learned a new skill. Maybe you had a class where you learned how for the first time to play tennis or to swing a golf club, or to learn a new swimming stroke. You want to introduce it, have a nice slow demonstration, give people some practice time, give them some positive and constructive feedback, and then next time you see them, let them practice that skill again, because then they can keep improving, and then they can also feel good about what they've learned. Don't say, hey, what do you want to play today? If you're bringing in some games, have the game there. Know what you want to do with them. And then afterwards, you can assess, did this go well? What would I do different? Once again, here, these last two bullets. We don't want to eliminate people. We don't want to embarrass them. And this is for adults too, because that just does not promote a lifelong interest in physical activity and exercise. We want to do things where people can feel good about what they're doing. They have some low risk situations, like not in a competition, but low risk situations where they can practice. Let them practice some more next time you see them. They will get it. They will get better. And then choose games that keep most amount of participants active and kids are not out. And this means modifying. So you can modify some classic things like, say, softball. You can modify it where there's more activity in there. There's more running. There's more activity where people are throwing the ball more in the outfield and such. And so I encourage you to look that up. And then, of course, cool downs, quiet time, slowing the body down. Parents should complete, of course, health and physical activity questionnaires. You might need to have kids further screened by a physician if there's any kind of problems, or get a physician to okay if a kid maybe has some kind of a heart issue or asthma. Remind them of the rules, and instead of just stating the rules day after day, let the kids state it back to you. See if they're listening and paying attention to that. And remember, just like with our adults, all youth programs should take place in a clean and clutter-free exercise environment, a place that's safe. So if you're going outside with the youth, before you go out with them, take a walk around the area and make sure it's clean. Every once in a while you hear about, there could be broken glass out there. Sometimes there's needles on playgrounds. So you want to review the area first before the kids go out. Nice tips for youth fitness leaders. And I know some of you love to work with kids, and you've probably even already been working with children. Keep instruction short and simple, right? Have them repeat it. Use demonstrations. Sometimes you want to slow down your demonstrations. I've taught swimming for years and years, and so I want to slow down. I don't want to do it like competition speed. I want to slow it down. When I teach swimming, I have people put on their goggles and watch the swim stroke under the water. I have them get up and watch it on the deck. And then I ask them questions about what they're what they noticed. And of course, nutrition is really important. We want to help kids make sure that they're having good breakfasts, good lunches, good dinners. And so you can send kids home with basic nutrition information. You can, ask parents to pack certain, healthy snacks, and you can give them a list of what that is. I'm sure if we were in class today, some of you could tell me that your kids at school, or kids that you know at school, they have certain rules for the kinds of snacks that they can have. And of course, drinking water. Kids respond to dehydration with an excessive increase in core body temperature. So they have a greater risk of heat-related illnesses like heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and even death. And there are kids that die every year because they're out. And the classic example is, it's August, you got kids training for football, it's a really hot day, they have on their football gear, and they're not staying hydrated enough. They're losing blood volume through that sweat, and they end up dying. And so there are many examples of this. So there's our strict rules now about it. But you also, another way to help kids is, kids don't often need sport water like Gatorade, but they might find it more palatable. So a good thing to do is to mix it. Mix a full Gatorade possibly. It just depends on how active they're going to be or how hot it is. Maybe mix a Gatorade or a juice with some water in it. Kids don't normally need to be carrying around Gatorade bottles or soda bottles. Kind of sad when we see that, because that's a lot of extra calories that they don't need. But in this situation where kids are out playing or it's extra hot, we want to make sure they're drinking enough. So making the water, the fluid, more palatable by putting some sport drink in there can be helpful. All right, you guys, that is it. This is our last chapter, and you can use this information for if you're when you're working with kids, or if you have or will be having kids of your own. You want to help them all stay active, enjoy what they do, so they will continue to be active as adults. Thanks, everybody.